In this lesson, we'll learn the methodology and the quilting pattern required to master the lattice background fill. Here, we're going to utilize some technology. I've brought in Procreate to help us understand the methodology in the process. This tablet piece of paper is actually a photograph that I have taken, and it represents the 11 by 11 stencil that is in my 3 stencil lattice background set. This picture is the 1/4 inch, but with the magic of Procreate, I can enlarge it or make it smaller for all of our requirements. So you'll get an idea of what the 3/8 and the 1/2 inch lattice would look like as well with this one piece of paper. All right, so here I have our background. Let me shrink it down for you again. And we're going to talk about how to draw or trace or use the stencil on a practice piece so that we can learn our muscle memory. That's the most important part of the process, is learning the muscle memory of this design. So I'm going to open up a piece of paper, and I'm going to enlarge, let me close that out, so that you can see that I have begun making my registration marks tracing out this stencil. Instead of having to turn to work diagonally, Procreate allows you to turn your piece of paper. So I'm going to turn my piece of paper so it'll be easier for me to draw while I explain the process, and then I'll straighten it back out when I'm finished. So I'm going to go in with a blue color, and I'm going to try to brighten it up just a little bit. See if you can see it just a little bit better. And let me make sure I'm on the right layer, because that can be a problem sometimes. And I want to talk about the process of drawing these out. When I get to an actual practice quilt, I'll show you the reason why I like to work from the bottom up, but I do like to begin working from the bottom up instead of the top down. And it's just my years of experience working with this particular pattern, it works best this way. So normally when you get a stencil and you're going to be drawing, you go in and you start marking all the areas that the laser cut out for you to mark. Okay, that's just basic. I'm going to show you how not to do this, because it's going to make a difference when you are actually marking this out and then go to quilt. The important thing to know about working with this stencil is that you'll want to use a marking utensil that is going to give you relatively fine lines, because you want to replicate your actual stitches. Your stitches are not a 1/16 of an inch wide or an 1/8 of an inch wide. So you're going to want to have a marking utensil that you can trust that's going to give you a decent line. I like to use the Take Note, the Crayola Take Note washable gel pens. They're great. Some of you have had very good luck with the different water-soluble tools like the fine line mark be gone, whatever your preference. If you're doing practice and you just want to use a friction pin, by all means, but find something that's going to be a little bit more precise. Later on in the lesson, I'm going to show you on fabric different marking options that may assist you when you're working on fabric. But for right now, I want to concentrate on how we're going to actually mark on our stencils. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you stay to the inside of your stencil. Up and down, that is vertically and horizontally, and make your marks to the inside. This is going to give you the most accurate 1/4 inch line and most accurate 1/4 inch line so that everything will be uniform when you're finished. All right, see me marking on the inside of the stencil. Aim your pen tip or your marking tool tip towards the inside of the stencil. All right, let me shrink that down for you, and let me close out the background. And now you can see this is where I marked before, and this is my newer marking here. All right, the reason why I have an example, we put that layer back on there. I did it in black here for you, so you'll see the difference. Let me turn that off again. The reason being is, can you see the difference by using different portions of the stencils, how you get inaccurate markings? You'll get wider, or it'll be less than, or smudged over. Like if I drew a straight line here, look how far off that was. This top line is from this line over here. Same thing with this one. If I draw a straight line, it's not going to be 100%. Same thing here. The distance here is greater than the distance here. And so that's why it's very important that when you are marking out your stencil, let me open that back up again for us, that you keep to the innermost portion of the stencil when marking. And that's going to, again, give you the most accuracy so that when you go to quilt, you will be able to quilt without having to zigzag over to catch where you were going, in that direction. All right, that is the best that I wanted to show you on my methodology on marking out the stencil. Now, let's move on. I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to bring up a new piece of paper, and I want to show you in the beginning, let me close that out, you may wish to extend your lines. So here is what the actual stencil will look like when you have finished marking it out. What you may want to do is come back over here, and let's say I had that background. Let's see if I open that back up. It will be there. You can take this and extend, and it's not going to let me. I've put it in different layers. Give me a second. There we go. Let me open that background back up. Now, hopefully, yes. So now I can extend all my lines so that they're touching each other. So you see what I'm showing you here? So this kind of gives you the actual, go ahead and extend your lines. And one thing about this that makes it easier from the way that I used to do it before with other stencils and then bringing a ruler out was that the precision wasn't there. Now with the stencil, the precision is there. So if you need to draw out your lines, whether it be for your muscle memory or starting out using it on your fabric, your quilt practices, or your projects, by all means, feel free to extend those lines. Another item that you might want to do until you get used to feeling comfortable and confident with the pattern is mark the areas that later on, and I need to turn off, give me a second, my guide here, and there we go. And you'll want to go in, you may want to go in and mark the areas that you're going to fill, all right? And I will show you that in a little bit when we start working on the actual quilting pattern, the quilt path. But each one of these spaces represents where you're going to have that fill, which will make your lattice actually pop. So whether you do an X or a little dot or something so that, squiggle, whatever, so that you know that that's an area that will fill that might be beneficial for you also. So let's move on now to the next step in the process where we learn the actual quilting path and start building that muscle memory. I'm going to go ahead and askew my page so that I can draw better. I want to make sure that I have this assist guide on because that's going to help us out a lot. All right, and I'm going to change the color. Instead of using the blue, I am going to go in and use a bright red, and I'm going to show you how this works. This pattern works on the diagonal. We're going to work from the top to the bottom, and we're going to be doing it, basically think of it as a row going diagonally, and then we're going to break it up and go work from that point upwards towards the top and then downwards. So this is the basic quilt pattern. We're going to start with this top bar of this set of vertical lines, okay? And we're going to quilt to the right. Let me turn up that opacity so that you can really see that line. It's going to make everything a little bit darker, but I think with the different colors coming in, you should be able to differentiate. So we're going to start from over here, and I will get into more detail when we're actually quilting on a project. I just want you to learn the muscle memory, so don't worry about, oh, where do I start? You've put your needle down over here somewhere, and you're going to start here and go from left to right. Then you're going to travel down this line to that point, and then you're going to quilt from right to left. You're going to stop when you are right at the intersection of this vertical line. You're going to come down. You're going to go to the right and touch the next set of vertical lines. You're going to go up. Then you're going to quilt to the left. And now this is where I begin my fill work. I'm going to quilt horizontal lines going back and forth. And depending on the size of my block, and you may have to travel on one line going back, I get anywhere from 4 to 5 every once in a while. I squeeze in 6. It depends on how dense you want this. The denser you make this fill area, the more your lattice is going to pop. So once I get here, I'm going to come across. I may have to travel. I'm going to go up and touch the bottom of this set of vertical lines, and then I'm going to begin the same process of filling in this area. Then I'm going to come where this vertical line, top of this vertical set of bars is. I'm going to quilt to the right. I'm going to quilt down. I'm going to quilt to the left. I'm going to touch, and I'm going to travel down this line that I worked right there. That way you're closing off all those stitches. I'm going to travel to the right, up, to the left, and fill. Travel up and fill. Don't worry about these right here. Everything will be closed in once you're finished, but just bring it all the way over to the edge, touch this line here, and just work and fill whatever way you want. Then we're going to stitch to the right, down, to the left, down, across, and if you see, we're building a T. There's a T that drops down. Right there, there's a T. There's another one and another one. And we're just going to keep working on the diagonal. And this is the quilt path. All right. So let me do this a few more times. Again, this is muscle memory, so don't look at my drawing for perfection here. We're just wanting to learn this quilt path. And once you learn it, you can travel anywhere you want. If you have a little moment where you weren't paying attention, or it's a very forgiving pattern because there's a lot of backtracking or traveling anyway. So you don't have to be worried about being totally perfect to begin with. Just learn the pattern. The path, I mean. Cross, fill. Down, over, down, over. Now here, you're going to imagine that you've got another set of vertical lines. So you're going to come all the way over, up, because you actually, your pattern doesn't stop till down over in this area, okay? I'm going to bring this up just a little bit more for you to see a little bit better. So I'm right here right now where I'm filling in this area. Across, down, over, down. And again, you're going to imagine that you're going across, coming up, going up, filling this area, and you're out. All right, so let me straighten that up for you. And that's what it looks like so far. So let me change it again so that I can work on it at an angle for myself. And I'm going to change the color. And I'm going to go with purple. And so we are here at this point and we need to start traveling down. So you have to imagine that T. So here, instead of, you may not have space up here to start quilting a T. So what do we do with the outside of the vertical bars? We go down, correct? So that's where we go with this. We're going to go down, across, up, touch, and fill. Up, across, and fill. Down, across, down. See how when I bring everything down, that closes off any stitching that was open on this side. We're going to go across, up, to the left, fill, any backtracking, up, fill, across, down, across. All right, so you see how that's going. I'm going to kind of work a little quickly here because I want to add a couple of layers so that you can really see that pattern emerge. The best thing to do is to draw yourself out some practice pages to work on and doodle this until you feel very comfortable. And then you can take it to your quilting machine and work on a practice sandwich. Practice first. Don't try to take this to a major project until you're very confident. There are some tricks that I will show you when working on a project to keep you out of any kind of jeopardy. Once you feel comfortable with this and you have your confidence, it's a very, very fast pattern to quilt out, believe it or not. And I've used it for all sizes. You've seen it on the postcards. I've used it for a large heirloom quilt. And I just lost my memory because I was talking. So it happens. Up. There we go. And that's why we practice, because we don't want to have to pull those stitches out if we're using a very fine 100 weight thread. I'm honestly telling you, you want to feel very confident when you work in a project like that. But anyway, I was saying that my competition quilt, and I'll work out of that. Let's change colors, and I'm going to do one more. So my competition quilt has it also. We're going to go to green. And I've done it on a very large heirloom queen size quilt that you probably have seen in my cover photo on my Facebook page. If you follow my professional Facebook page, you may see it. So it's a very versatile backfill. And the 1/2 inch is actually, I think it would make an amazing section for, let's say, a utilitarian quilt where you want to have a little bit of fancy work, but not too dense. Because it's a 1/2 inch, it won't be as dense. as, say, doing it a 1/4 inch. You could definitely get away with the 1/2 inch stencil. You could get away using a 40 weight thread instead of using a thinner like 60 or 100 weight. You could definitely use a 40 or 50 weight and be totally fine with that design. All right, so let me tidy this one up here. We'll move on. This is the best direction path that I have felt successful with in this pattern. I'm going to leave it there. The reason why is because you're going diagonally, and let me turn the page. You're going down diagonally across your fabric, and so you're going to have, if you continue working in a direction for too long, you will end up having some distortion. And I find that if you go right down the middle and then work a few rows going up and then a few down and then just kind of stagger them, it kind of balances out the tension in the quilt sandwich as you're working, and you have less issues with maybe pleats or puckers or some real distortion issues. Another thing is if you're working on a large area, especially if you have loft. My competition quilt, special quilts, I do use 2 layers of batting. I use an 80/20 or a silk, and then a layer of wool or a full layer of wool batting, or sometimes I'll peel them apart. You can actually peel wool batting into 2 layers, and maybe if I don't want big loft, super high loft, I'll put just one of that peeled layer of wool on top, and that'll still give me the beautiful memory and the loft that I need. But when you're getting into a lot of loft in areas, you want to consider breaking that down, kind of stabilizing large areas. So I would go in and quilt a vertical line here, and maybe over here do another vertical row, and just kind of make sure that you have those areas stable so that you have less movement of your batting and less chances as you work to have that loft shift, and then you're having issues with, again, possible pleats and puckers. So let's go ahead and let me show you working. We've worked going up. Let me change this and let's go work going down. Let's find another color that works well against, I know, this is the one. Nope, we're going to go this color against that other. All right, so, oops. I have a tendency to still want to move this, and I forget that all I have to do is just enlarge and rotate, and I'm there. So we're at the edge. This is actually, say this is the edge of our quilt that we're working, okay? And we've worked from the beginning diagonal up, and now it's time to work down. So we work, it's the same premise, just decide where you're going to start. So I'm going to start here on the top of this vertical line, because I know this vertical line here goes from left to right, then down, then to the left, then down, then to the right, up, and fill. And when you're quilting, again, this is just for muscle memory. You want to make sure you're quilting down those lines. You don't want to have a big thick line here and a real skinny line over there. It will really take away from the effect. So try to practice, even with your muscle memory, to hit those points as best you can. It'll help you when you actually start quilting. So it's the same design, same path. You're just approaching it from a different direction. You're closing off threads that have been left exposed the same way. and you're just building that T and filling in those spaces. All right, coming to the end. And remember, you don't finish down here. You have to make sure you finish all the way off the diagonal. Let me bring this paper back into the center there. And we finished that up. Actually, I'm going to make this correction because it should have gone down farther than across, because that is actually the line there. Oops. I'm not paying attention. There we go. Anyway, you get the premise of it. This is the edge of the quilt, and this should be the edge of the quilt that you're working on anyway. So that's why you have all of this down here, so that you can make the mistakes and get on track, so that you stay, you're quilting everything properly up to the edge. All right, so there is what your lattice is going to look like. So if you had gone in and extended these lines, if you need to do that, feel free to do that. I had to do this for quite some time till I got really comfortable, so that I really, knew that, built that muscle memory. And, make yourself a mark. Whatever you need to do, this is the fill area. But that gives you an idea of how you can work building your muscle memory. So again, my recommendation is to get your stencil. We're going to bring that back on board. Let's hide that. Learn how to mark out your stencil properly, which would be this one right here, where we learn exactly where to place our lines when we're marking things out. So that would be that one. We don't want to have skinny lines and fat lines and uneven lines and horizontal lines and vertical lines going crazy. We want everything to be as uniform as possible, so that when we go to quilt, we're going to be quilting as uniform, because it's that uniformity that makes this pattern work so well. All right, so now that we have completed the muscle memory part, it's time to move on to a quilt sandwich.